Hey everybody, today I'm going to be changing out the air governor on the compressor of our bus and tightening the belt tension on the compressor as well. And I decided to start vlogging all of my maintenance procedures to hopefully help out some other schoolie owners and save you some headache and some money on the road. This stuff's really easy to do. I know it seems intimidating, but it's not. All you need is some simple hand tools and a little bit of effort, and you can really save yourself some cash on the road. Our bus is a 1991 International 3800. It has a DTA 360 and a Allison MT 643 transmission. We're changing out the governor on a Bendix TrueFlow 501 compressor today. All governors are pretty much the same. There's a few different types and brands, but they all have the exact same function. Really the only difference is the way that they look. So let's get to it, and I'll show you what I do and how I get started. So the first and most important step of servicing any part of your air brake system is drain the tanks completely. You do not want to have this pressure come out of a hose when you don't expect it. So you'll find under your bus there's a few pull cords to drain your tanks. Generally you'll have 2 tanks on your school bus. Pull those cords, every single one of them, until the air is completely drained. So if you look on your compressor, this is your air governor. Like I said, there's a few different models and makes that have them mounted in different places. Our compressor is a belt-driven compressor with a base plate mount. Some of them are gear-driven, so it'll look a little different depending on the bus that you're servicing. But anyways, this is what we're going to be changing out today. It's basically 2 bolts, your air lines, and then your what looks like a sensor back here. I don't know if you can see it. It's actually a switch. It's your air pressure switch. It tells the bus when to send a signal to the dashboard to light up your low pressure warning light and your low pressure warning buzzer. So we'll get to that right now. So to get started, we're going to release the tie down that holds these air lines just to give them a little bit more flexibility. Once that's released, take your 5/8 wrench, crack both the fittings here for your air lines, and remove those. One bolt out. There's the second one. And now this should crack right off. Just like that. There's your governor. There's your low pressure switch. All the fittings and plugs that are associated with your governor setup. You're going to make sure that all these get replaced to the correct ports. So if you need to, take a picture, take a video while you're doing this, make a mental note of where everything goes. That way everything's installed properly. Here's our old gasket. You want to make sure that this is removed as well. Sometimes they'll peel off. Most of the time you have to scrape them off. Looks like I'm going to have to scrape this one. So we'll get the majority of it off. And then I'll get a scraper over here and remove the rest. So I'm just taking a razor blade, working it across the back side of this old gasket. It's very important when you're changing anything on your bus, or any vehicle for that matter, to remove all old gasket material for a proper seal. Just like that. Scrape it good, make sure it's nice and clean. Now we have a clean gasket mating surface. Alright, so now I already went and installed my plugs that came with the new governor. Just going to make sure that they're nice and tight. Installed in the same ports as the old governor. Now the next step is going to be transferring our low pressure switch over to the new governor. So, pressure switch is removed. Now we're going to remove the fitting. All this fitting does is just give it the clearance to screw on. Now we just have to remove our air fittings. There's one. And two. Now we're going to install the fittings on the new governor. I'm going to use a little bit of pipe thread tape on these. And you want to make sure when you're using pipe thread tape that you thread it the right way, because when you go to thread in your fittings, it can unravel the tape if you do it the wrong way. So there we go, we've got our fitting taped up. You want to make sure not to get any of the pipe thread tape near the mating surface of the fittings, because you don't want to get that in your lines. Always keep it backed off about a thread or two. So there's one, and we'll do the other one. It says both of our fittings all taped up. Now what this tape is going to do is it's going to lubricate the threads a little bit. That way when you go to install these in your new governor, you can seat them down as much as possible. So we'll grab our new governor, start threading this one into the proper port. This is when it matters that you paid attention before on what goes where. Start threading this one into this port. And we'll start cranking them down. Now if you didn't thread your tape the right way, this is when you're going to notice. When you go to tighten these, it's going to start unraveling your tape and binding it. Which really shouldn't be too much of an issue if you get these cinched down the right way. But if it matters to you, you can always just go ahead and remove them and start over. So there we go. Got our two fittings installed in the new governor. Like I said, we've already tightened down our plugs. which came with the new governor. They won't always, but I got lucky on this one and they did. Now we're going to go ahead and install our pressure switch again. Need some pipe thread on this just to be sure. Make sure it's clear. Go ahead and install that. We'll install our low pressure warning switch. Like I said, all this does is just send a signal to the dashboard. It'll illuminate your low pressure light in your instrument cluster or wherever it's placed. And also a buzzer. There we go. Install back the way it was. Now we're going to go ahead and get our gasket and our bolts ready. The easiest way to do this is already have your bolts in. Already have your bolts in on your governor. Hold them. Flip it over. Put your new gasket in place. And now we're going to mount it right back where it went, right here. And then just start threading your bolts in. Once you've got them started, everything's aligned properly. You can cinch them down. So before you tighten this, just take a real quick second to visually check that your gasket didn't fall off or anything like that, that it's sitting where it's supposed to be. We'll go back and we'll grab our 1/2 inch, basically just the reverse of how we started this process. Start tightening our bolts down. Now you don't need to crank on these. Just want to make sure it's nice and seated. Last thing that you want to do is strip or snap these bolts, because then you're about to have some real fun extracting a bolt from your compressor and putting in a helicoil or retapping, whatever you have to do. So now that we have those bolts tightened down, our next step is going to be reconnecting our low pressure switch. So we'll insert the wire back in place and just screw in the tie down. I already went ahead and cleaned this connection and cleaned up the switch a little bit off camera when I was reassembling everything. Anytime you have your bus down for maintenance and the parts are off, that's always the best time to clean everything up. It's just way easier to get at. So now what we're going to do is take our air lines, set them in place, start tightening down your air lines again. You don't need to crank on these because you don't want to strip them. Put them right back in place the way they were. We're going to reattach our discharge line now. This is just a support bracket for it. Comes right off the mounting base for the compressor. Make sure that's snug. Reattach the airline support bracket. Make sure that it doesn't rub against anything and put any holes in the line, cause you any more headache. Now all that's left to do is start up the bus, charge the system full of air, check for any leaks, and make sure it gets to the right pressure. So I'm going to go crank it up right now. So to check your system for leaks, all you're going to do is just get some soapy water in a spray bottle. Spray everything down, all the fittings, all the connections, and look for any bubbles. So now to tighten this compressor belt, there's 4 bolts. I don't know if you can see them under here. There's one here, one here, one right about here, one here. That's just on the base plate. When you come up top, so up on top, you also need to loosen this bolt and this bolt. Break those free, and once all 6 of them are loose, you'll be able to adjust your tensioner right here and get the proper adjustment on your belt.